About the very common death rally, pre-death rally.
Oh, yes, people.
And
yes.
it makes their loved ones think they're coming back.
No, that's right. Well, you know, my feeling is, I think that's interesting. I think, yeah, the time of death, I mean, it's sort of like if somebody squeezed a bit more petrol out of the tank. You thought you'd run out, but suddenly you found a bit more. The sort of, you turned on your reserve tank like that old VWs used to do, you know, you turned your reserve tank. I don't know, I can only say, I think, especially when it's, I don't know, I mean, what can I say? It's not really. I mean, often this is the thing with attachment energy. Attachment's so pervasive and so utter. It's this kind of, and it connects to objects and people and things, that when there's nothing there to grasp onto, you will just die. But if there's something there, and then suddenly this surge will come, and then people are there, so you get all excited again, and then you die. I don't know what much to say really. It's just, I don't know what to say.
Okay.
I don't know what to say.
So
no, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. Yeah. I understand. I don't know what to say really. What else, people? Maybe I can say something else. Ask me some more questions. Give me another go. See if I can answer some other questions. Go on. Yeah. So there was a hand at the back, was it? Yes. Yes.
So at the moment of death, our own death, should we try to focus on our crown or our eyes as opposed to?
That's an interesting question. I'm curious. Say that again. Say that again.
So
at the time of death.
At the time of death, when we're in the process of dying.
Yeah.
Should we focus on the crown of our head or our eyes?
I see. No, that's an interesting point. I don't think any of them, because that's your body, that's gross, that's the senses, and your mind as you're dying, you're getting very internal. So I think the body will be the last thing you want to concentrate on, because even as even already, like, you know, even as your earth element ceases, which is the first of the 8 stages, already you're becoming internal. And your eye consciousness goes, and your ear consciousness goes, and the breathing. It's like, so I think you wouldn't be any of those. You'd just try to be. Because you see, okay, if you're dying, say I'm dying, I'm a little Buddhist, and I've got my friends saying my Buddhist prayers for me, which is what I've asked them to do, then I'd be focusing on those sounds, you know, hearing it, and then I'd be thinking, and especially, you know, I mean, if you're a Christian, you'd be thinking of God. You'd want to be thinking of God. You want your daughters to be saying the prayers to you, or God loves you, or that's what you want to hold on to, something that's more subtle, which means hearings. That's more subtle than seeing. So I think it wouldn't be much use thinking about focusing on the body, not at all. Okay. What else? People. Yes.
When people have near-death experiences, or they die and then come back,
yeah,
how can that be if things are dissolving into each other?
Well, I know that's. I mean, well, you know, you can go. You go to sleep every night, and that's the same dissolution process. It's just not as dramatic, because when you sleep, you sleep, and then you go to your dream state, and then you wake up in the same body. When you die, you go to the abado, and you wake up in a new body. So it's more dramatic. So as long as if the karma's not there for the whole process, it's not finished yet. So you come back, and that's not an uncommon thing. And the near death, no, it's not an uncommon experience. And maybe it's a bit similar. You're kind of on the way to die. Your question, you're on the way to die, but suddenly you get a bit of a surge of life again. You know, so it's a bit similar to that. The karma hasn't quite finished. Yeah. I don't know at what point it's irreversible. I don't know about that. I don't know at what point before you can't come back.
Because my cat stopped breathing several times.
Oh, there you go. There you go. That's an example.
But never came back.
Yeah, that's it. Well, that means this grosser consciousness really did cease, and that can happen. That can happen for sure. And you come back to life again. No, I heard that too. That's just the grosser consciousness, and you go into your subtle, but the karma's not over, so they come back again. That's interesting. No, that's not uncommon. That's not impossible with this understanding this process. Mm. What else? Maybe we just go. Yes, hello, Lou. Talk to me, darling.
Okay. If you grew up in an environment in which killing of animals was a daily practice and you were involved in it because you didn't know any better at that age. What is the best practice for purification of that particular
I understand.
thing?
I understand. So, okay, yeah, good question. So then, everything we think and do and say sows seeds in the mind that produces future results. So part of that process is regretting the things that you've said and done of thought that have harmed others, having compassion, doing a certain practice and vowing not to do again. So that's a whole marvelous way of creating karma. There's no karma we can't purify. So there's these 4 very logical kind of steps, really internal steps. I always like to use a simple analogy. Like if you've been eating sugar all your life because you didn't know any better, and you go to the doctor and says, God Almighty, Lou, you better put yourself together, you're going to be dead soon. So you've got to reverse what the damage you've done, as long as you've got your wits about you. So the very first thing is you've got to acknowledge, well, I did eat sugar. I didn't know any better, but out of my ignorance. And so in a sense, you regret it, you own it. You don't go, well, it's not my fault, it was not my fault, it's my mother's fault, I'm going to sue the sugar company. Meanwhile, you're dying of sugar. Kind of ridiculous. You've got to acknowledge you did it out of your ignorance, and then you regret it. It's a very wholesome kind of practical, not guilt, but like I did do it, and you know what? I regret having done that because look at the suffering it's causing me. Regret's like self-compassion. Very important first step. It's owning the fact that you did it, right? You hear my point, Lou? You've gone from,
I do.
what happened to you? Where are you? Oh, there you are. So then the next one is, well, in this framework, we're talking about relying upon the Buddha. He's like our doctor. In a sense, he's not our creator, so he's our doctor. So the second step, they call it reliance. And we've been delighted we've got this doctor we found whose advice we're going to take, because that's the medicine. And then you also have compassion if it's in case, and certainly all the creatures you've harmed, you have such compassion for those sentient beings. You kind of regret now for their sake, because in a sense, regret is like for your own sake. You regret having done it because you don't want the future suffering results. Then you think of the sentient beings you harm, you regret for their sake. And if you can, if it's in that case. And then the third one is you in a sense, take the medicine. You'd apply the antidote, they say. So we have lots of practices that we do that involve, recitation or visualization or mantras, and it's your mind doing it. So there's this particular Buddha we use, Vajrasattva, saying the mantra, the Sanskrit mantra is said to be very powerful medicine. And it's like you're visualizing, imagining, purifying. And then the fourth one is you make a vow not to do it again. So it's this gradual process of reprogramming your mind, basically. There's no karma you can't change. There's no thing, no matter how bad it gets, you can but those 4 steps are kind of important. The regret's important because you acknowledge that you did it, because you don't want the future suffering. Then you have compassion. Then you do the practice, visualizing or whatever. And then you vow not to do it again. You determine, I won't do it again. You change your habits. And each of those attitudes has a very specific type of impact upon the results, They all have their own way. They each purify the different ways that karma ripens. Does that make sense, Lou?
It does, thank you.
Good, darling. We might do that practice before we finish the weekend. We might just do we call it the 4 opponent powers. We might do that just as a short visualization. Yeah. Yes, Tracy.
Tracy's there. This is Brian.
Hello, Brian. Okay. I can't tell anymore who is anybody. You can't assume. That's not being rude. It's just a fact, isn't it? You might well be Tracy, for all I know. Go on, Brian.
So I want to go back to the very subtle consciousness. Once it is in the bardo, once it has kind of left the dying body.
And then kind of woken up in the bardo, been through the reverse 8 stages and woken up in this kind of dream.
Right. So at the time that, the mother and the father and the egg and the sperm fertilize each other is the time when the subtle consciousness or very subtle consciousness enters into the next human vehicle, if I understand what you've said so far. Is that right?
Okay, what happens is, yeah, right. So let's there's this Brian, maybe Brian was in I don't know, maybe you were an elephant in Africa last life, or a kangaroo, or maybe you might have been another person, who knows who you were. But at the time of your death, this particular karmic seed was triggered, which is your virtuous karmic of non-killing. Sorry, your own, but the karmic seed from non-killing, and that triggered a particular karmic seed that caused you to be born to your present mother's human womb in a few weeks' time. It's kind of programmed. You've booked your womb in advance. I know it's like ridiculous, but it's like that. I know it's so corny, but it's like that. I promise you. They don't even know you're coming, Brian, because they think they made you. They're so arrogant. Oh, we made a pretty Brian. No, you didn't. You just gave him a body. So never mind, there you are, you're dying gradually. And then when the very subtle consciousness eventually leaves the body, and then you go reverse 8 stages of these 8 stages, and you wake up in a kind of more subtle kind of state, which is like a dream state when you go to sleep, but it's at this intermediate state, but it's a similar, it's only the subtle, it's a subtler mind, and it's very powerful experiences, and it can be very pleasing dreams, very weird, and you're sort of hanging around waiting for your new mum and dad to hop into bed, you know. So eventually when they do, it could be a few days, it could be a few weeks. And when they do, that's the condition. And then you die from the intermediate state, if you like, you die from there, if you like. And then you run like a magnet to that new egg and sperm.
So my question is it solely the karmic seeds then that I have planted through my many, many previous lifetimes that are completely responsible for the selection of the next mother?
Well, it can't be completely responsible. Yes, but it can't be completely responsible because they're playing a role in it as well. You've got some strong history with these 2 people. You've got to have a strong karmic history with these people. And then depending on the history you've got with these people, if it's very virtuous karma, you create the virtuous karma of having a nice mummy, but maybe, you know, you get a human mummy, but maybe due to your own negative karma in the past, you give birth to a mother who's going to abuse you. That's another type of karma, but they're very specifically your particular parents. You are the main cause of your actions are the main cause of you going there, but they play a role. It's an interdependent scenario. You've got to have karma with them. They've done their part in it to create the cause to give birth to you.
So I know that for some individuals in the Buddhist faith, you know, they are reincarnated. Well, we're all reincarnated, and some people recognize
that's right.
individuals as reincarnated. For example, in monks, they recognize
That's
the
right.
Rinpoches as reincarnated.
Yeah.
So, and you're talking about this interdependence and having some connection to the mother that you will end up
That's right.
entering. So I guess because we have so many previous lives,
That's right.
we have so many choices for who will be our mother.
That's right.
Okay, and I guess I'm coming away with the impression that the major driving force is the karmic seeds that we have planted over our multiple previous lifetimes. The way we I don't want to say feel because that's the wrong word, but the way we are at the time of our own death. In other words, we want positive karmic seeds to be generated, and that guarantees as best we can the positive rebirth as a human and the positive rebirth in a mother who hopefully won't abuse you, but will
Yeah, well, okay, so put it this way. Okay, so there's more to it, Brian. So, okay, so when you look at you've got the 4 ways that your karma ripens. So at this time of death, roughly speaking, one of your non-virtuous, non-killing karmic seeds was triggered. At this time, you start to not breathe, which is the seed that booked you in advance to go to that particular mummy. Second, though, all your seeds are going to be determining your personality traits. So maybe you've got strong karmic connection with, let's say being a Buddhist. You wanted Buddhist rebirth, you want to practice Buddhism, you want to continue breeding your lamas. So you're going to more likely than get a mother, or get born to a mother who can be supportive in that. She could even be a Buddhist herself. And then second, your tendencies, your strong tendencies to practice more Dharma, to do this, to be moral. And then third, your experience is similar to the cause. You've purified all your negative karma, so you won't get a mother and father who will abuse you. You'll only have a mother and father who will be kind to you and loving to you. Because you've got generosity karma, you'll be born to a nice rich family. Because you've got good ethical behavior, or the environment even will be delicious as well. You create the cause for all of that by living in vows and by purifying negative karma.
Yeah, that's very clear, very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, yes. That's the tragedy of, let's say, so I'll make this point more clear now. So there you got your fisherman, the little boy. There was a virtuous karmic seed, very strong. We've got millions of seeds in here. One of his karmic seeds, and he was in a previous life, he would have been in the lower realms. We can deduce this from his past killing. The habit to kill was strong, because we can see now with his tendency to kill, that's from being in the lower realms in the past, where he completed the main karmic result of killing, which is lower realm rebirth. The main karmic result is a type of rebirth. That's finished. But because he didn't purify all aspects of killing, one, the tendency to kill, by vowing not to kill again, and 2, the experience similar to the cause of being killed and dying young, which he also had. He died scuba diving at the age of 29. He hadn't purified those residual results, if you like, of killing. And so he had these residual results in this life. Now look at this life. There are 7 billion humans. We all won the lottery. We all got a human body, but the vast majority of humans have a tendency to kill. Enormous numbers lie, steal, harm others because they haven't purified haven't purified all aspects of all the non-harming by living in vows and by living a life of ethics. So then you get he got a life of a human, but he had good qualities, but he had a particular one of a tendency to kill, which he hadn't finished, he hadn't purified. So he meets fishing and the karma ripens, and there he goes again, spending his life being in love with fishing, thinking it's good, knowing it and never seeing. This is the tragedy of the habit. So you've got to that's why we need to purify. We need to live in vows of non-killing, non-stealing, non-lying. This is an absolute certainty, and I'll describe this. Lama Zopa said, for example, our life now, let's say we've got a human life, we're trying to be better people, we're in a spiritual path. I mean, the vast majority of humans don't have a spiritual path, don't even have good ethics. Not being rude, because they haven't got the tendencies. You haven't strengthened those tendencies. But if we've lived in the vows in the past, if we lived in vows of non-killing, non-stealing, non-lying in the past, and if we purified daily, which puts atomic bombs under the negative tendencies, then you won't only get a human body, you'll get a really good human body, you'll have really good tendencies. You have no thought to kill, steal, or lie. You'll only have the thought to be ethical. You won't have bad things happen to you. You'll have money in the bank, and people will love you, and you'll be a nice person, and you'll have a good environment, and you'll live till your fat old age. They're all so the tendency to keep killing, the experience similar to the cause of killing, which is being killed and dying young, and the environmental result, which is being sick, the environment harming you. They're the 3 residual results, the leftover results from the main action of killing, the main result of which is a lower realm rebirth. So there's a lower realm rebirth of the negative actions. It's the heaviest one. Then there's the residual results, the tendency to keep doing it, the experience of having it happen to you, and the environmental result. So if you do purification every day, and I'll explain more, and you do live in vows every day, you purify all aspects of the negative. And you get a really good human life and be bopping along on your spiritual path, which is what we want and need. Are we communicating? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Okay. And Lama Zopa said that the life we've got, so meaning he's talking to us who've got who have a wish to practice a spiritual path, doesn't mean you're all a saint. But the fact that you're even in a place where they're practicing a spiritual path in the first place, that you want to practice spiritual path, that you want to practice ethics, or let's say Buddhism or whatever, that's pretty it's not just random, it's because the tendency is there. You recognize it, you meet it, you hear it, and you recognize it again. Or you've constantly been looking for a spiritual path in your life, That's pretty powerful. It's not just random. So he says the karma we created just to have this human life with this human body, with the life we've got, is for sure not just the result of not killing, but it's the result of non-killing within the framework of living in vows of not killing. So why are vows so important? Let's look at this psychologically. You see, all these words like vows, blah, 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 it sounds like religion, But actually, I really think it's important to remember, if you drive a car, you learn to drive a car, if you had to write down the number of things that you agree not to do, guess what? That's called a vow. Must be hundreds. But you don't go, someone's forcing me to not put the foot on the brake at the same time as the accelerator. I'm allowed to do what I like. Excuse me. You're happy to learn how to drive. You want to be a better driver. But as soon as it's religion, go, someone's forcing me. Do you understand? You've got to grow up, So it's powerful to make a decision. I will never kill. It's stupendously marvelous. I think so. Now the vows are important for this reason. This is Buddha's teachings, and Lama Zopa waxes lyrical about vows, and I love vows too. Sounds a very nice way to live your lives. Okay, what is it? Let's have a look. Okay, now every second we're creating karma. Every second we're thinking, doing, saying things, and they're sowing seeds in the mind. Okay. Now, but let's look into more depth. about what's involved in doing a complete, what they call a complete action, which is a seed that will drop into your main bank vault, which will be one of the ones that will be triggered, which will give you a life, a type of rebirth, the main bank vault, where you get not just the tendency and those ones, but the actual result of a type of rebirth. Okay, so when we do an action, so let's use here, we want bucket loads of, in our mind, we want bucket loads of particularly non-killing karmic seeds. Why non-killing? Because it's the heaviest. Killing is the heaviest, I would think, the heaviest of harming, isn't it? Somehow most primordial. Stealing, lying, punching in the nose. But somehow killing seems like really extreme, doesn't it? Taking someone's life, So to have a vow not to kill is one of the most powerful virtuous actions to want to do. I remember one Lama asked, if you want to give one piece of advice, he said, don't kill. Which comes from the thought, I will not kill. Your hand does what the thoughts do, right? What the thoughts think. Okay, so we want, by the end of, at the time of death, we want bucket loads of delicious, rich, non-killing karmic seeds in our bank vault. To at least get one of them to be triggered, to give us a decent future life. But we also want all the other ones as well. The tendency to not kill and the other ones, all the other residual results, if you like, is how I call them. The tendency, experience of it, and the environmental results. So in order to drop a karmic seed of non-killing into your main bank vault, it needs to be coming from when you do an action, a complete action of killing. And what that involves is 4 things in place, roughly speaking. This is roughly speaking. 1, there has to be a living being in front of you. So let's just say that mouse in the kitchen, object of the action. 2, your mind involved in it. And this is just simple. There's more to it. And 1 is the intention. I must not kill. I better be careful, not hurt that mouse. I must not kill the mouse. Intention, bare bones, I will not kill. And then with that has to come along a motivation. The motivation. These 2 seem to almost be the same thing, but they're different. 1 is intention, I will not kill. The second one is your motivation. Why, Rabina? Oh, compassion, So the ideal action of non-killing would be with the intention not to kill, driven by a motivation of compassion. That's the most powerful motivation, you could say. So 1, the object, a mouse. 2, intention and motivation. Number 2, 2A, 2B. 3, you do the action. You get the mouse, you catch it. 4, happy mouse, living mouse as a result. Let it out. Thanks, Rabina. Bye-bye. Happy mouse. Roughly speaking, there's more to it. Roughly speaking, that's a complete action of non-killing, and that'll drop a nice little karmic seed into your bank vault. But it's very weak seed. Because why? Because we're not bodhisattvas yet. Our motivation is not bad. But if you suddenly confronted with 47 mice, I guarantee you're going to say, oh, no, not possible. I'm afraid I had to kill them. It was just too difficult. You get my point? 1's fine. 2, maybe. 7 even, but 47. I mean, this is why it was so moving. One of our nuns who recently passed away was a meditator. She lived up in the mountains in our place. She has a retreat center near Big Sur, up in the bush, the mountains, way up in the, we had to walk there 8 hours to get there. He said, even the birds are quiet. It's a lovely big place. The land of calm abiding, it's called, I think. It's about 500 acres. Some lady gave him the land. Anyway, she was meditating there for a while. She went up there with her big sacks of, whatever you go, with your sacks of food, And whatever the creatures are that turn into moths, what are they? What was it before?
Caterpillar.
Oh, was it?
Caterpillar.
Little bugs that go into flour?
Caterpillar.
They would live in a sack of flour? Weevils. Okay, good. Well, suddenly she had this in her little house. They all turn into moths. And she has like hundreds of moths, right? And she was telling them, Shay, it's over weeks, days, maybe weeks, days, she's like, catch the moth. Oh, money papillon, and release it. And then release it. Moth after moth after moth after moth. Now, I would say that's compassion. Easy one moth, oh, aren't I a good person? I didn't kill a moth, But our virtue is not that strong. It's got a bit limits. Even your baby whom you adore, if it cries all night, every night, you'd be one of those mummies up for murder, I mean, because we're human beings. We're very limited in our compassion. So this is where the vows come in. Our virtue is not strong enough. Our motivations are not too bad, but they're pretty weak, So this is Lord Buddha's teaching, okay? He really loves his vows. And there's a logic to it. Like driving the car is such a good example. If you didn't know what you shouldn't do, you'd crash in a minute. It's sort of obvious. So here, what are we trying to become? Not a better driver. We're trying to turn ourselves into a better human being. We're trying to turn ourselves into a non-harming human being. It makes sense. That's what vows are. They shape your behavior. So they even say in the teachings, in some of the teachings, that vows, these powerful psychological decision that you make that forms your behavior, that programs your behavior, that you firmly decide to live your life according to, you know. They say they're like a subtle physical energy, visible to clairvoyance. And it kind of makes sense. You know yourself, if you vow to go on a diet, you will always remember that vow. You won't just suddenly find yourself stuffing chocolate cakes, completely forgetting your vow. It'd be surprising. It's standing on your shoulder. Remember your vow, Rabina. It's sort of logical. It fits. And we need these little reminders because we're all crazy, you know. So the delight in keeping vows is so reasonable when you see the benefits of it. So Ramazova says vows are so powerful. It's that, he said, a person who doesn't kill as a result of living in a vow not to kill, the karmic result of a not killing in terms of in the context of a vow is infinitely more powerful than a person who merely doesn't kill. Because what happens is, and this is the point, if to do without vows, if to do a virtuous action of not killing, in order to drop a seed in your bank vault, you need to have the intention not to kill and the motivation not to kill. Then it's only when you meet a mouse or meet an ant and you consciously decide, I must not kill it, that you create the karma of a complete action of not killing. So how often, if you're living in India in this rainy season, you're like in Jurassic Park. You have to be intending every second not to kill. But, you can afford not to ever think about not killing all day here. I haven't met one creature that's confronted me yet. I've not had to have the thought, I will not kill. Are you seeing what I'm saying? So because karma is caused by your mind, the thought. So if you never meet a creature, you won't ever have a thought not to kill. So we're sitting here very nicely, being nice people, not killing, but there's no thought not to kill. Therefore, there's no karmic imprint in the mind of not killing. Are we communicating? Yes. So then we're not creating much virtue. We're thinking we're nice people, but we're resting on our laurels from last life. So by having vows to not kill in your mind stream, 24 hours a day that you are keeping them, while you're sleeping, while you're eating, while you're shouting at your husband, you're still keeping your vow not to kill, in the pub getting drunk, you're still keeping your vow not to kill. 24 hours a day you have that vow. Such is it, so powerful is it, it's such that then 24 hours a day you're purifying your mind and you're creating the causes you're creating countless numbers of karmic seeds of non-killing. So living in vows is a no-brainer. Are we communicating? Yes. You can't get ahead of the game. Just being good is not enough, Lama Zopa says. This is the Buddhist approach, And it's putting because it's kind of the decision. In other words, you're defining yourself as a non-killing person. That's pretty tasty. You define yourself as a non-killing, like you define yourself as a car driver. Well, you're defining yourself as a non-killing person. Not just I'm a nice person, really, but occasionally won't kill. No, it defines your behavior. Not killing, not stealing, not lying, not jumping on the wrong person, and so on and so forth. So vows are stupendously powerful. I think it makes sense psychologically, frankly. So it's putting atomic bombs under those tendencies, and you're creating masses of virtuous karmic seeds 24 hours a day. I promise that's why I'm a nun. Why would I want to be funny looking 14th century clothes with a bald head? Well, it's convenient, but the idea of accumulating virtuous karma, I like the idea of living in vows. So it's vows, so powerful. And then the other practice to have is to purify, to do what I just said before. Strong regret of the actions you've done, strong compassion, do the practice and vow not to do again. It's just so these two together, you've got a very good practice. You can relax. You have a marvelous grounded practice. And it's easy then to create virtue, easy to program your mind and your behavior then you will get the full results. You will get a human body, and you'll have no tendency to harm or kill or steal or lie, and you will not be harmed or stolen from or killed by other people, and you'll have a really good environment. Whatever you eat will nourish you. I was thinking of like Warren Buffett. I read his biography. He's like 90 something, that rich fellow, And his daughter said in her biography, I've never seen water pass his lips. He's like 90 something. His diet, since he's like naught, cheeseburgers, some kind of flavored Coca-Cola, and vanilla ice cream. So he should be dead by now, So that means, I don't know if he's got a tendency to kill, I've got no idea. But that's called the experience similar to that's the environmental result of past non-killing, such that he eats rubbish all his life, supposedly rubbish, like we talk, and he's still fat and healthy, So always, the Buddhists view, always karma is the first cause of everything. Karma is always the first cause. So this is why, and that's why at least these 4 results, I find this very powerful to really focus on, because you think of your life, the entirety of your life is encompassed by these 4. 1, there's your body, human. 2, tendencies in that body, your mind. 3, your experiences at the hands of others. 4, the physical world. That's it. So then you have these 4 ways of understanding. Whenever something happens, oh, well, that's karmic. Someone doesn't believe you. Oh, I must have lied in the past, said to sue them for not believing you, even though you spoke the truth. Karma from past lying. Or Mr. Trump, the other way around, isn't it? Remember the Washington Post used to count all his lies. They measured them from 3 to 5 Pinocchios. They had all this list of hundreds and hundreds of lies. But, look at Mr. Trump. Some people so adore the man. Whatever he says, they believe him. That's because he's got some karmic history with those people of not lying in the past, of telling the truth, that whatever he says, they believe him. So how you're seen and treated by others, that's experiences similar to the cause, and the causes are not in this life, they're from the past. Then there's the tendencies or intentions or habits similar to the cause, your own personality traits. And then there's the physical world itself, the environmental result. So, for example, killing, the experience similar to the cause. Let's say you've got COVID and you died from it. That's the experience similar to the cause from past killing. But if you just got sick but didn't die, that's environmental result of past killing. So you just have to check if the physical world harms you in some way, and that includes people, then that's environmental karma. Or if it helps you. But our tragedy is we tend to think of karma only in terms of the bad things. But if if you, no matter what you eat, or you never got COVID, for example, and no matter who you met, you never got COVID, you don't get sick much, you're really fat and healthy, your bones don't hurt that much even as you get old, that's the virtuous karma of past non-killing, such that that your body is healthy, your body is reasonably healthy, Then how you're seen and treated by others is more specific. That's experience similar to the cause, where you're seen and treated by others, liked, not liked, harmed, raped, being people kind to you, steal from you, give you, don't, whatever. So if we know these 4, we can interpret our lives properly instead of just becoming this victim that feels it's not fair, why is this happening to me? The Buddha's got these answers, it's up to us if we want to apply it. And the other interesting point is that these 4 opponent powers of that purification process, each of those 4 specifically purifies each of the 4 ways that karma ripens. So, for example, regret, it's the 4 R's, a good way to remember. Regretting killing, for example, the first step, regretting killing, which is, yes, I did kill and I regret having done it. You know what, Rabina? Because I don't want the future suffering result. Regret's like compassion for yourself. That's how we call it in the West. So regretting killing specifically purifies the experience similar to the cause of killing. You're getting harmed or killed or dying young. Regret purifies that one. The second one in this 4 opponent powers is reliance, and that includes refuge and compassion. So they say that purifies environmental result. They say the very ground you fall down on that hurts you is the very ground you rely upon to stand up. So in this sense, they talk about reliance, meaning compassion, for example, relying upon sentient beings, meaning if you didn't have sentient beings who were suffering, if you never met suffering sentient beings, how could you have compassion? So you need suffering sentient beings in order to have compassion. So in that sense, they say this purifies environmental result. I don't quite understand it, but The third one, the remedy, in this case, doing a meditation, doing a mantra, visualizing, imagining, because your mind is what purifies. That purifies the lower realm results. And the fourth one, the resolve, the determination not to kill again. That's obvious. That purifies the tendency, which is the heaviest one of all. So this fisherman, I always tell the story. The mother was in tears. Well, where's he been reborn? She said, because he died 5 years before, scuba diving. He spent his life being a fisherman. I said, well, I don't know, but go and ask Geshe Lama Kontrok, this amazing Lama we had. He passed away now. This is years ago. He was a great yogi in the mountains. And these holy beings, when they get to this level of realizations, they've got incredible clairvoyance, they've got incredible compassion, incredible realizations of wisdom, you know. They don't tell you what they see. They're very humble. Sometimes they do. So she went to him. She asked, where's my son being reborn? So she gave his name. And he kind of, and I'm kidding, I'm using Google again, but it's true. He checked his Google, he accessed it on his Google, his own memory. Because when you've got clairvoyance to this degree, you can see things so clearly. Just heard his name, and he went, ah, yes. First he was born in the animal realms, and now he's in the hell realms. And she said, oh no, what can I do for him? And he laughed sadly, and he said, what do you mean for him? He said, for everybody. I met her years later. She's not a Buddhist, but she was very moved by that. It's very interesting, isn't it? So I'm just telling you what they said. I'm not asking you to believe me. Because you see, he had a good life. He was a kind guy, had good tendencies, but he hadn't purified his tendency to kill. So because he had strong attachment to it, and when he saw the killing, he saw the fishing, you know, he didn't, I mean, this is the thing with fishing. You don't want to harm the fish. Fishermen love fish. You see my point? That's why attachment as a motivation is more subtle. It's harder to see that it's harming others. Attachment is almost under the guise of kindness. So it's like he couldn't see. This is the thing about the tendency. Because the attachment was there, the habit was there, and the attachment was there, the pleasure that was triggered by it was very strong. So naturally he wanted to do it again. It just was all encompassing. He just defined himself in terms of being a fisherman. So he couldn't see the suffering. So his mother, she didn't like fishing. She didn't want to tell her son what to do. She never liked to go fishing, but she went one time. So you could say, because she had no tendency to kill, she could see nakedly the fish's suffering. It was evident to her. It was very clear. He couldn't see it. He saw the same fish as she saw. He saw them in the boat. He saw them flapping their bodies. He saw them, but he just didn't see suffering fish. That's how desperate, that's how powerful our delusions are. You're seeing the same fish, and the mother sees suffering, and he just sees flapping fish because he's got his own fantasy. Attachment's painted his own picture. This is how attachment blinds us from seeing reality. You know, we just see what our own projections. That's attachment. I mean, anger is obvious. You know, if you want to stab them every day and kick them and harm them, that's obviously more heavy. But so the delusions blind us from seeing, and we're even talking conventional reality here. I find that very sobering, you know. So at least if we wake up in this life with no tendency to harm, that's a miracle. That means we've lived in vows in the past. Because look how hard it is to change habits, you know. There's my friend on death row, this fellow who thinks of torture all the time, meaning the habit is so all-consuming. We know our own minds. We think of cake all the time. We don't know why. No wonder we freak out. Or people who want to torture all the time. He didn't know. His mother didn't teach him. So attachment, when it's so strong, we know that. You're thinking about it all the time. You're thinking about it all the time. You can be chatting away to your friends, but it's in your mind. It's there. We know that when we've got problems and dramas, you know, it's there all the time in our mind. We can't make it go away. That's suffering, isn't it? So imagine, to be fortunate, to be so glad you haven't been reborn with the wish to jump on little girls all day and then write a fantasy story, which is what pedophiles do, to make it a good thing, you know. They write these fantasies in their head to support their action. You have to make it good. It's too painful otherwise. We have to make it good, you know. So something as naked as torturing, but still, attachment makes it nice for you. You know, we defend ourselves. That's what delusions do. So we're living in la la land, it's really clear. So bad enough the harm we're doing to ourselves, but when it's attachment to doing things to harm others, that's when it's so heavy. So at least we don't have that. How fortunate. So purification and living in vows are your best techniques. With that, you can sit back and relax and watch television, watch Netflix all day, eating popcorn. Okay. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. I really mean it. Okay, people, any questions there? Any questions anyway? Any questions, people? Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, good, darling.
So is consciousness then like immortal, essentially?
Yeah, but essentially beginnings and endless. Yes.
Is it considered to be, in the Buddhist point of view, is it like a quantum thing? Is it energy, or is it matter somehow? Like on
You mean the
small
mind?
scale?
Well, I don't know what those views are. I don't know what to say except to say the words. I remember the Dalai Lama said it's easy to talk about what the mind is, but it's hard to have a direct experience of your own mind. That's a really subtle, sophisticated thing. So the only thing we can say is the world consists of matter and minds, and you can't see mind. You can't taste mind or touch it or smell it or taste it. So it's simply called mental energy, so when you're enlightened, when you've finally cut all the delusions from your mind, developed all your perfection, completely achieved Buddhahood, your consciousness, just like they talk about God, your consciousness pervades wherever there is existence. Nothing can prevent it. Because if something is not physical, how can it be confined by space or time or matter? It sounds so abstract, but your mind, when it's fully developed, and everyone's mind the same. There's nothing to limit it. Right now, our mind's stuck in this body. We can't see past our own nose. You understand? Well, it's really limited. Our ability to remember anything is so limited. Our ability to cognize things that are more than 2 inches from our nose, we can't see. We're very limited in our capacity for cognition. But the Buddha's view is that this mind that's all-knowing, all-seeing, all-compassionate, just like the Christians talk about God, the Buddha says that's our potential. So then the best you can say is when you're Buddha, your mind is wherever there is existence. It can't not be. You see the minds of all beings perfectly. You have infinite compassion for everyone. And you have this infinite power to do whatever is necessary, including manifesting in different bodies to help sentient beings.
And does that manifestation, is it like a temporary, or is it?
Sorry, start again. What do you mean by that?
Well, you were saying that like an enlightened entity would sort of appear.
Oh, manifest in bodies. No, you just,
Yeah.
come and go for sure. You can just, yeah, absolutely. You can do what you like. You're completely in charge of the universe now. You can do what you want. You can manifest.
Just sort of pop in.
Absolutely.
No,
No, totally. Honestly, now there's this lovely story. I'll tell you this lovely story about the Dalai Lama. He's said to be a Buddha. I have to say he's said to be because I don't know. I'm not clairvoyant, but I'm prepared to have confidence. He seems a pretty good person. I mean, so usually when the more you know somebody, the more you see faults, but I can't find it hard to find faults in the Dalai Lama. He tries to act like an ordinary person and sound angry, but he just doesn't convince us, it's very funny actually. Anyway, this is a wonderful story Lama Zopa told years ago. Okay, before I say that, this is how they talk. On this path, as you progress gradually, and on the Bodhisattva path, there are 10 stages of development before you become a Buddha. From the time you've achieved realization of emptiness, all the way up to Buddhahood. And even the lowest level Bodhisattva, at that point of having realized emptiness, you can already manifest your mind in 100 different bodies simultaneously, and you keep getting better at it until eventually it's just like nothing, So anyway, this story is the time of the Tibetans when they came out of Tibet. They were kind of all the lamas, the old holy beings, were desperate to find land to start monasteries where they could start passing on their knowledge from to the next generation. You need situations, and they call that monasteries. So they were negotiating with the Indian government. The Indian government was so kind to them, this poor country. So there were these hundreds of thousands of acres of forest down south that were the object of discussion to give to the Tibetans to build their monasteries. Now it's like little Tibet down there, So the story goes something like this. His Holiness, because they were based up in Dharamsala, up in the, what they call the hill, this is where it's up 12 hours north of Delhi, and Delhi is in the plains and like boiling hot every summer, blue sky, no such thing as a cool change, and just like 110 to 120 degrees, like unimaginable, boiling. So anyway, in the English, when they all came along and started running the government in Delhi, they got up there to have a bit of breath of fresh air, so it became the hill, I forget what they call it, the hill something or other, I can't remember. Anyway, Dharamsala, they were given some houses up there and they started their government in exile. This is maybe 60, 61 or something. So the story goes that His Holiness sent his minister, appropriate minister, down on the train. You got to drive down to Patankot, down the hill, and you climb on a train. It's 12 hours on the train down to Delhi. And he got down there and he couldn't get a meeting with the appropriate Indian minister. So he got fed up, went back up to Dharamsala. And His Holiness basically said, it'll be okay. Go down again immediately. So he did. And he got in the office that day, and it seems like the Indian minister's little boy was in the office with his daddy. So he was having a chat to the Tibetan minister, and he mentioned he wanted a little dog. So the Tibetan was delighted to grease the wheels. I'll get your dog, you know. So he went outside, and there was a sadhu, and he had a little dog. He bought the dog from the sadhu, and he gave the dog to the little boy. And then the little boy was blissed out and ran to his daddy, and then daddy was happy, everyone was happy, and the meeting happened, and things moved forward, you know. So apparently, as Lama Zopa says, the dog and the sadhu were manifestations of the Dalai Lama. So, I mean, I know this sounds like science fiction. I mean, I don't talk to my sisters about this. You know, they're completely cynical about my Buddhism, you know. So I just crack a joke, you know, if they ever heard about it. Oh yeah, don't be silly, you know. But this is the power that we've all got. This is the Bodhisattva path, especially. So, and they say that the Buddha, if Dalai Lama is a Buddha, his mind pervades the universe. This is why I gave that talk at the Catholic University, the similarity between the definition of God and Buddha. Very similar qualities, you know. The difference is Buddhism doesn't assert a job of being a creator. We don't need creating. Sentient beings create themselves. So this enlightened being, you know, if he is the Buddha, his mind pervades the universe. His mind right now, we see a Dalai Lama body. We see this nice Tibetan gentleman, you know. But he's just one of the trillions of manifestations. He's doing it spontaneously and naturally. We have that capability. And that continually goes as long as suffering sentient beings exist. That's the power of this motivation and the enthusiasm, the courageous compassion of the Bodhisattvas, you know, no matter what. It's my job. So this drives your development of wisdom and drives your practice over countless lifetimes until eventually you achieve this Buddhahood. So the thing is about the Buddhas, or even the high-level bodhisattvas, they've gone beyond the need to have a body. We keep having bodies going from this realm to that realm because we haven't cut the root of all suffering. We haven't realized the ultimate way that things exist. We haven't realized emptiness. Maybe we'll discuss this. So we keep creating karma, the negative karma, and keep ourselves going through these 12 links of constant new rebirths, you know, just going from one life to another. So we've got to try and get some control over it. So at some point, you don't need to be reborn. You've done the job. You don't need to be reborn. But the bodhisattvas happily want to be reborn to hang around suffering sentient beings so they can develop all this power and this compassion in order to become a Buddha, in order to then effortlessly be able to continue to manifest in countless bodies, in countless realms of existence, in order to benefit sentient beings. And that's why when I told these Lutherans, this fellow burst into laugh. He said, no, I don't want that. It was an exhausting thought to him. He couldn't stand the thought. I want to go to heaven with God, he said. So it's clearly a very different goal, you know. Do you understand? I mean, it's pretty much like science fiction, I agree. But this is what the Buddha's teachings are. It's all there in the literature. So, you know, it's up to us to buy into it or not. Who's asking? Anybody there, Kavita, darling?
Sorry about the echo. In the context of our conventional truth, ultimate truth, so thinking about conventional truth and ultimate truth, does death and this discussion about the process of death only relate to conventional truth?
Is that your question or someone else's?
Mine.
Okay. Yeah, we're talking conventional reality here. We're talking conventional reality. We're trying to establish reality just conventionally before we get anywhere near the ultimate. So what that means, so that sounds kind of, because we don't have a reference point in our culture and in our science and in our philosophical views, we might have, but we've got to be knowing what the hell Buddha's talking about when he means that. So it's not as if there's death over here and there's cups and saucers and computers and good and bad here, then there's sort of like something ultimate over there. That's a common sort of feeling we have. So basically the way to put that, everything that does exist conventionally, which we have to establish, death, books, toilets, flowers, self, we first establish their conventional nature, Now we're ready to look into how those very conventional phenomena exist ultimately. So ultimate reality is not a separate kettle of fish. Ultimate, the way that the ultimate, meaning the words, never mind the words even, emptiness, we won't even say that. But the ultimate, finally, death, books and toilets. Conventionally, there is a book, there's a death, and there's toilets, and you define them and you understand them conventionally. And then we have to then establish that very thing conventionally has no intrinsic nature. So conventional and ultimate have to be together, because the emptiness of the intrinsic death, the emptiness of an intrinsic cup, the emptiness of an intrinsic book, that emptiness, that lack of intrinsic existence exists right there on that book. Are we communicating? They're not separate. One of the biggest mistakes we make when we hear the word emptiness is we chuck the baby out the bathwater. Oh, well, there's no book, there's no I, there's no death, there's no this, there's no that. That's the worst mistake. That's why Tsongkhapa especially praises Lord Buddha for his amazing teachings on dependent arising, you know. Because dependent arising, as Lama Yeshe puts it, paraphrasing, is the king of logics to prove emptiness. You know? So the absence of an intrinsic book is the way of saying the ultimate nature of the conventional book. So you can't have one without the other. So as soon as you describe a thing, that by definition is conventional. And then once you've established it accurately, you then search among those components for the intrinsic death, book, or toilet that we instinctively believe is there. And then when we finally find that there is no such thing there, that's the realization of emptiness, of that thing. You with me, Kavita?
Yeah. So let me look, I wrote this down. Okay, so conventional truth, would it be accurate to call conventional truth the realm of opinion? It's opinion truth. It's just our opinions.
Yeah, but it is opinions. Yeah, but but it has to be valid opinion. Opinions in their nature doesn't mean there's no validity there. Everything is a viewpoint. 1 + 1 is a viewpoint. 1 + 1 = 2 is a viewpoint. But within the rules of math, it is a valid viewpoint. It's a conventional truth. Of course, it's an opinion, but it's a valid opinion. And a valid opinion is one that is in sync with the way things exist. So if I say that's a book, we first establish what is a book, definition of book, how does it function, and then we can validly say that is a book. That's a conventional reality. It's a conventional truth. It has to fit the definition. It has to function as a book. So that's why they say when you finally realized the emptiness of the intrinsic existence of that book, nevertheless, it still functions as a book. Do you understand?
Thank you.
So right now we've got opinions and viewpoints, but many of them are all of course live in La La Land. So at least the first level is get in touch with conventional reality. Then we'll be a nice, virtuous person and have a happy mind and be blissful and lovely and rich and famous and gorgeous and have a divine life. Life after life after life will be fine. If we even get conventional reality clear and practice virtue. Do you understand? So the Lord Buddha tells us in the Heart Sutra, he says, form is emptiness. Then he says, emptiness is form. Then he says, form is nothing other than emptiness. And then he says, and emptiness is nothing other than form. All he's saying is you've got to have the two truths together. They can't be separate. He's telling us that. In other words, spelling it out, form is the first of the 5 aggregates, and we can have anything, put any noun there, any object there. You can say I, or book or toilet or microphone. So we can say, we'll spell it out. We'll go, instead of saying form, we'll say I. So he's saying wherever there is the conventional I, wherever there is the conventional I, right there is the absence of intrinsic I. And then he flips it over. And wherever you find the absence of intrinsic I, you find the absence, wherever there is the absence of intrinsic I equals emptiness. Wherever there is the absence of intrinsic I, which means emptiness, you will find right there the conventional I. You cannot have one without the other. They're like flip sides of the same coin. When we're on track with this, we've got the two truths, then we're on track understanding Lord Buddha. Otherwise, we're up a garden path. I always want to say without a paddle, but it's the wrong one. Up a garden path, period. So we have to, it takes time though, isn't it? This is the thing, it's true, Kavita, yeah. So there are opinions, everything, conceptual, we're living at the level of conceptuality, which is opinion, viewpoint. But there are some that are valid. The cup does hold you tea, you just proved it. That's a valid cognition. It's got to be fitting. There's got to be a basis, a valid basis for that name. So there's an elephant on my table. There's no valid basis for that. So conventional reality is very simple. It's conventional reality. So it's very clear. You label it, you define it, you check that it fits the definition, and you're done. It's very easy, really. I mean, we'd all have blissful lives if we spoke only truth, conventional truth. We'd be so happy. Isn't it? So then as Lama Zopa says, the very thing that's empty is that very thing that we think is right there. So once we establish that thing that's right there, that's exactly what's empty. So until we've established what's there first, we can't see what's empty. We've got to get conventional first. Then we can see. That's empty. We can talk more about that if you want to. What else, people? Oh, it's a bit cold. I left it there for 3 days. Hot water. I'll drink it nevertheless, with a happy mind.
Rina?
Any more questions?
Yeah.
Go, darling.
It seems especially hard these days when opinions are being sold as consensus reality. And it's so hard to.
So hard.
Yeah.
It really is true, isn't it? But maybe I think then maybe we've got to just see that maybe 99% of the things that we see and hear and read about are not worth thinking about. We just cloud it's not being narrow-minded, we just exhaust our minds trying to conjure up everybody's opinion about every Democrat, every Republican, every person, every here, there, everything. It's just too painful. Whereas if we take, the Buddhist approach would be, if we take this view of impermanence, karma, compassion, use that as your framework, then we can learn to see the suffering of the world, then we can get some kind of sanity from it and not go completely crazy. Because we don't, and also I think we convince we have to have an opinion about everything. So when you hear about some fellow, for example, just now reading about Picasso, because he was a dude, heavy duty dude, he misused his women, all that, blah, blah, we all know he's a misogynist. I mean, it's just join the universe. I mean, if you had to throw out every man, all the artists, there'd be no artists left, because they all jumped on their wives and jumped on everybody else's wives, or arrogant and misogynist. It's just the nature of the universe. What's surprising, Nothing surprising. So we have to agonize, should I like Picasso's art? Shouldn't I like Picasso's art? I mean, you understand, we're endlessly trying to work out what to think properly to be valid or to have whatever. I'm just talking, you understand? Just relax. Doesn't matter, we don't have to have opinions about everything. Just leave it there. You understand what I'm saying? Just leave it there. We're obsessed with thinking we have to have opinions about everything. Are we talking about the same thing? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Or what are you talking about?
I'm talking about, for example, I'm thinking about vaccines.
Oh, it's the same thing. Okay, the same thing. Why do we have to have an opinion? And why do we have to tell everybody? Can we not mind our own business? So you mean then, of course, if it's a law, then it gets difficult. So we have to shut up and just accept, because bodhisattvas live according to the world. They just give their pride, they put their pride away, and if it's the way the world is, you mightn't like every single law, I mightn't like everything the IRS does with my taxes, but you can't fight everything. You've got to kind of get the general consensus and accept. And if you want to live without, if you want to live without, like I've got a friend in Texas who hasn't never had the vaccinations, so she's never going to come to India. Maybe it changes eventually. She won't come to India with me on a pilgrimage because she needs a vaccination. But eventually it'll change, so we don't have to worry about it. But I think we make our choices, put it that way. We make our choices and then we live with those choices instead of moaning and complaining about them. Are we talking about the same thing now?
Sometimes people can't afford to make the choice.
Sorry, what do you mean, darling?
If they need to keep their job.
No, okay. No, that's not true. You decide to make the choice that you've got no choice. You don't feel like you're strangled by it. You decide, I don't want to take a vaccination, but you do check it out that it won't kill you. And then you just decide to swallow your pride and you weigh up your options. Life consists of these, we can't be absolutists. We'll go crazy. We want to demonstrate about everything. We go mad. Of course we can. I mean, you can't not pay your taxes. If we could sort of tick the boxes, no war, please. I think nobody want to have a war. There'd be no taxes for all the bombs, you know. Sometimes we've just got to accept sometimes. I mean, I wouldn't have said this 50 years ago. I would have been up there demonstrating, shouting and yelling and, you know, kill the pigs and everything. It depends on your view. I'd be up there. Or if I was the right-wing side, I'd be there with the January 6 guys, you know. Depends on your views. So I think we just have to, what you have to choose. If you don't, you have to weigh up your own choices. Okay, this is an interesting point. All right. In the end, we only have two choices ever about anything in our life. Whether you want to leave your hubby, whether you want to continue your job, whether you want to not have a vaccination, you've got two choices. There's the options. And so let's say you hate your job. The boss is a creep. Your colleagues are horrible. The pay is boring. All might be true. So you're telling me about it. And I say, I really understand, darling. It's terrible. I agree with you. And so let's look at your options. Well, you have two. One is leave. And you'll say, no, I can't do that. I won't get another job. I can't leave. Not possible. I say, well, okay, we have the second option. Change your mind. Change your opinion. And there's only two options. There are only ever those two options. You either change the thing and you stop doing it, so you decide, I'm going to stick with not having a vaccination. For whatever reason, you can decide that. That means then that you are choosing then to lose your job, but you choose it. You decide it's your choice. But we want to be victimized. We want to blame other people for strangling us and even if you're in prison, even my friend Sonny on death row, innocent. I always use this example. Back in the 70s, it's a nice Jewish girl with a Jewish hippie husband, hippie kids, hippie, hitching in Florida. She gets picked up by two guys. The guys got stopped by the police. Sonny and her husband the two guys kill the police and then blame Sonny and the husband. So they're on death row. She's in solitary for years. I mean, it's so bizarre, you know. Nobody believes they didn't do it. The guys, they lie about it. The prosecutors don't believe it. The police don't believe it. The judge doesn't believe it. So they're on death row. He even gets executed, her husband. She went to the execution. His head burst into flames. She's in solitary. She at least got her two children, gives them to her parents. Her parents die in a car accident. She loses her children to the state. One nightmare after the other. Talk about choice, right? But she said, I knew I always had the choice to not go crazy, to not lose my mind. There she was in solitary with a Bible. That's it. And this insanity. She never lost her mind. She said at some point, no, she said, I finally realized I couldn't change anything, but they couldn't take my mind from me. So she said, I decided I'm not a prisoner. I'm a monk. I'm not in a cell. I'm in a cave. She didn't have a choice but that choice. But she knew she had that choice. So she kept her sanity. She learned yoga. She put herself together. It was the most intense struggle in the universe. Can you imagine? Said, I'd give myself permission for 5 minutes to be raging angry. Then I would stop. And she worked on her mind. She's not a Buddhist. She doesn't think about karma. She's got no view of all. She had this incredible emotional intelligence. She knew she had the power not to go crazy. So she changed her mind. That's impressive. Don't you agree?
Yes.
Of course there are rules that are wrong in the world. Of course the world's a wacky place with terrible rules and terrible laws and terrible lawmakers. There's no question about that. But if you have the view of karma, you know you created the cause to be born there. So it's your karmic appearance. And she never talked that way. She had this other ability to see that her mind was a flexible thing and that she would be the beneficiary of not going crazy and of not being angry. That's pretty intense, I'd say. She's now this little old lady in a wheelchair in Ireland. Husband just died. She got out after 17 years. And she's this kind of, you never, I mean, I've met so many people who've been in prison, who've come out of prison and are kind of emotionally broken, because it's really a debilitating place, you know. And most people don't have the ability that Sunny has. And she's this humble, ordinary little old lady now with pain in a wheelchair. She never complains. She's just like a little old lady. You'd never see any of this history in her. If you ever knew her, you'd never know, because she processed her life. She dealt with the reality that she was there, and she knew she had the power to keep her sanity and her clarity and not go crazy with rage and despair. I find that a really powerful example, because she's not a Buddhist or religious. She has no sort of, none of that. Do you understand? Because I think we just don't have a choice sometimes, and we don't have a choice, but because she didn't have a choice, she had the choice to change her mind. That's really the essence of the Buddhist approach. If you can change something out there, change it. But what if you can't? You can change your mind. That's the miracle. And it's extremely hard, but that's it. That's the essence of what we're talking about here, really. Do you understand, darling? And who's the it's not a moralistic issue. It's you're the beneficiary. I remember reading at the same time about some fellow, also innocent, and it's so common in this country, the suffering of people being accused wrongly, you know. This fellow who was accused of rape and murder, also innocent, but he, not having this emotional intelligence, and most people don't, you got to really learn it, he completely lost his mind. He was out of his brain with rage and despair, screaming daily, I did not rape and kill that woman. I did not rape and kill that woman. Now, if you said to him, well, sweetie pie, you know that you can change your mind, he wouldn't, I mean, not even an ordinary person with ordinary experiences, we can't hear it. We can't hear it. We'd just be enraged. How dare you say that to me? I'm allowed to be angry. Look what they're doing to me. That's the view of the ego. That's how we are. That's our enormous suffering. So to have this intelligence is all I can say it. I mean, this happens to be what the Buddha's telling us. He didn't make it up. He's just good at it. But Sunny's so impressive because she had no path, just her own internal wisdom, you know. I find that incredible. She knew she didn't want the suffering of going crazy and being enraged and hopeless. And the interesting point was, this poor fellow, because he's out of his brain, he was unable to do a single thing, to lift a finger to help himself. She was able to never stop working on her freedom, and she got it eventually, because she kept her sanity. I think it's stupendously courageous. And this is the real point the Buddha's making. We've got to see how our anger, our depression, our jealousy, our low self-esteem, our despair, that is what breaks our hearts. That is the cause of our pain. That's what he's telling us. And it's extremely hard to see that. We think it's the thing out there. It's pretty powerful. I'm sure it's time for a tea break or something. Is it time for tea? Well, I think we've gone past tea breaks. It's more like going home time, isn't it? What?
Going home time.
Enough, maybe. It's enough. It's not. We've already had a short session this afternoon, but is enough, is it? Mm-hmm. Enough? More than enough? It's intense stuff, right? Yes. And I shout it all, so that must even makes it more intense. And say it fast. Even more intense. So I think enough food for thought, okay? Everybody? Is somebody there, Kavita? Nothing else? So we think it's enough for now. Food for thought has all gone in, even though we won't remember 90% of it. It doesn't matter. It's gone in. It's there. We'll be able to access it, you know. So we think we're going to nourish these seeds we've planted with our effort, according to our own capacity, to work on our minds, develop our potential, be of use to others, one step at a time, and be ready for our death when it might come. Be emotionally equipped to realize it's part of life. It's nothing awful. It's just the way life is. And then we can help others die. So help your little mouse die, have your little pussycat, your grandma die peacefully, virtuously. That's all. That'll do, everybody. See some of you tomorrow. All being well. Yes, everyone. Much love, sweethearts. Thank you, Arlene. Thank you, everybody. Tracy, Brian, John, Mary, Merritt, Vincent, Emily, Christine, Angela, and Mummy Kavita running the show, and Lou. Thank you, precious ones. Goodbye, Donna and Mikey. See you all tomorrow. Thank you, darlings. Much love.